Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Joey and I have just had our brains fried, and we are getting ready to talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special. That definitely did not sound how it might have sounded, but all that to say, we just finished watching something that we probably don't really know how we feel about, and we're gonna dissect it.
Oh, I know how we feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe upon further review, we do know how we feel about it. But before we get into all of that, thanks for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. It's great to have you here for this one. Along with Joey, like I said, we're going to break down the Star Wars Holiday Special today. So maybe just as an opening thought, I don't even know what to ask you, to be completely honest. Joey and I just watched a 97-minute made-for-TV film. If you have never seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, which, by the way, neither of us had seen this going into this watch-through, and we had seen clips, but nothing could have prepared us for what we just watched.
Not a thing.
Yeah.
And with it being Star Wars, you have a baseline, right? You have certain things that have to hit for it to have the name Star Wars on it. It was marketed as a holiday special, so you have some idea of, what you would normally see in a holiday version of a show. Think of all the sitcoms you've ever watched, or any movies based around Christmas or, the holidays. So you have an idea of what you are expecting to see. And this wasn't it.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I mean, we could go into like the bits and pieces of this film. I don't even feel I feel dirty calling it a film. It feels like disingenuous to every other
Right.
movie ever made. But like, there are
this piece of work.
Yeah, piece of work. I said to you at one point while we were reacting to it, which, by the way, if you haven't seen if you're watching this and you haven't seen our reaction video, or if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead, and if you want to check out our reaction video over on YouTube, we live reacted to this movie as well. And I think I said while we were watching, the whole movie feels like a Trojan horse for like putting in like these either A, performances, or B, just like things you don't even really know. Like there is a scene there's several scenes in this movie where it's like 5 minutes at a time of like just nonsense happening that does not relate to Star Wars at all. Sometimes it's like cool. It's like a, like a 70s, 80s music video, and you're like, okay, I don't really know why that's in here, but it's happening, so I guess. Then there was other ones like that cooking thing at the beginning where it's like this this person just like offering a Wookiee cooking lessons for like 5 minutes straight. And you're like, what?
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the reaction. I think that actor was in blackface, which makes it even harder to watch now.
Yeah.
So that type of thing being, I guess, acceptable back then, and to see it now was really jarring and uncomfortable to watch that. So be careful if you're gonna be watching that. That is there, and I did do a quick Google search, and I'm like, yep, that's seems to be confirmed as well. So, yeah, all of these little 5-minute, I can't believe there were only 5 minutes. It felt much longer. Little segments of either some type of choreography or dancing or some type of musical number in the middle of Star Wars was, and here's the thing, I was trying to give it in the category of like the holiday piece of it, but none of the things that they were really that they were singing about or anything or that were showing was really like a holiday based.
Almost none, basically none.
Almost none. They were just, and it seemed like they hired these performers, and they said, "All right, what song do you have? Yes, we will use that, and we will write around it, whatever it is." And as much as that chef one was cringy, the one with the woman
Yeah,
that was singing to, it was essentially a VR. I don't know how else you could put it.
it was.
Kind of
Yeah,
like a VR headset type of thing, and she was singing very
seductively
suggestive,
and
seductive,
suggestively.
yeah, lyrics to what seems to be the grandfather of the Wookiee family. Um, just seemed real uncomfortable. And I kept saying, like, this is network television, this was what they were showing on TV in the 70s. So I thought that was a choice they made.
I wish I could remember the line because she says a line. This like fantasy woman that in. So there's this trader. He gives them like the mother Wookiee like oh, I thought it was a sewing machine or something, but it ended up being like a music box.
Yeah, some kind of media player.
Which ironically, both of the gifts he gives are just Trojan horses to put music
Yeah.
videos into this movie. And one of them's to the grandpa, one of them's to the mom. But
Right.
yeah, back to the grandpa one. I mean, it's so like it's weird. Like something like that feels super uncomfortable, but I imagine it would have felt even more uncomfortable. Or like in 1978, that feels so sexually suggestive to have like
Yes.
8-year-olds watching it. Like this
Yes.
grandpa's sitting there watching this like this
With his
good-looking
underbite.
woman
Oh,
with his
yeah, all
under
right.
yeah, he's like and he's like oh and he rewinds it, then he's like oh and he rewinds it again. You're like oh. he's like he's like getting like turned on and it's like oh, I just don't know what's happening right now. Make it stop. It
Yeah.
was so uncomfortable.
I
And it's
can't
made for like
believe.
8-year-olds. It doesn't make any sense. If you've never seen this movie, watch that 5 minutes because you will be just astounded at how much it all does not make sense. It is just
Yeah.
flabbergasting. Ugh.
Right. So whenever I watch some movie or TV show or anything, I always try to find the one moment where I'm like, this is not going to be good. you know, I feel like that came pretty early when we were watching this. Probably went right when we saw that first holographic dancing number or circus number there.
Yeah.
Um, where it really could have gone either way there, but just by the quality of everything there, you're like, ooh, this is gonna go bad pretty quick. And we were right how and how quickly it went bad. Um, I had a friend tell me like, oh, you're gonna be amazed about how bad it is, how bad this show is. So I'm like, I guess I'll have to see for myself. And I honestly never would have thought, and I never would have thought it would have been like to this level because you did still see, because I saw that Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher were all in it, so you think maybe there's going to be some redeeming factor in it, but not really.
Yeah, but even that, like, even the appearances, and I don't even want to call them like roles because Carrie Fisher is in it for like, 5 minutes, and then she's at the very end, and then Mark Hamill's in it for 5 minutes, and then at the very end, and like Han Solo's kind of in it throughout, but
Hmm.
even like the Star Wars characters felt like they weren't meant to be in the movie.
Right?
Like it
Yeah.
was kind of like they wrote this movie, they're like, oh, let's just substitute the characters and make them Wookiees instead.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then they're like, maybe we can throw in like a Mark Hamill appearance, and maybe we
Yeah.
can like none of it felt like it was written
Planned.
as a Star Wars. Yeah, planned at all, really. But didn't even like feel like it was written as Star Wars. It was so weird.
Right. And also the first probably what would you say maybe 5-10 minutes were the Wookiee family basically talking to each other with no subtitles. I don't know,
Yeah.
with no idea of actually, so me and Ben were basically like giving them giving them dialogue while we were watching this. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
back and forth. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So again, that was probably early indication that we were in for something special.
The other part of this movie that I found so funny was that this is like a classic. I feel like this is like retro movies especially, but
Mhm.
like the bad guys are just bad for the sake of being bad, and almost like silly to the point of being silly. Like they go upstairs at one point to the child's room because they're searching the house. What's his name? Chunky. Uh,
Uh,
I keep
Lumpy.
Lumpy. I keep calling him Chunky. And they go up to Lumpy's room and they just start like tearing the place apart. And
Right.
then they come back downstairs and the Imperial officer's like, he's gonna have a fun time cleaning that. And it's like, what?
Like, why?
Your like satisfaction and your goal was to like mess up the child's room. It makes no sense.
And I think this is something that I don't want to even call them filmmakers, but whoever creates good filmmakers, um over time I think they understood the concept of timing, of how things should be done. This honestly could have been a half-hour special. Honestly,
Oh yeah.
it probably, with the amount of time of just cutting back and forth between people's like reactions, and slowly walking up the stairs, watching every single step, and kind of going back and forth. And yeah, there was a lot of waiting around in this show. And and for us too as well, at any time that there was a screen popped up or any type of technology,
It
we
was
were like,
like,
oh,
oh, here we go.
here we go again. We know what's going to at least happen for the next 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
and we were pretty much right every single time. Another performance of some sort. But I will say one thing that I think we both kind of did like was the cartoon that was kind of in the
Yes.
middle of it.
It was so, everything about this movie was, it felt very thrown together, which obviously doesn't make for a great movie, but the byproduct of that is like sometimes there's like these gems within all the garbage. and
Yeah, right.
and like there's this random like 2D, I don't even know if I can call it 2D. It's almost like, what's that show? Um Gosh, it's like a certain style of animation that reminds me of, it's not a King of the Hill.
Hmm.
I can picture the show, and maybe it'll come to me at some point in the pod. But it's like a certain style of animation where it's almost like grungy in a
Jittery,
yeah, jittery. Maybe that's a better
jittery,
word.
grungy. Yeah,
And basically, it's the story. It's the introduction of Boba Fett into Star Wars. Like the first time Boba Fett ever appears in Star Wars is in this movie, which is kind of crazy to think about. But
right.
but also, like what you mentioned, the 10-minute short is easily the best part of this movie. It's
Yeah,
not even
right.
close. And like it's the only part where you're like, "Oh man, I kind of didn't want that to end." And
Right.
you wanted it to sort of keep going. But
Yeah, and I always, you and I had mentioned like, how did this even come together? What there has to be some type of documentary or something that we could figure that out. I'm wondering if that animated 10-minute animated short was the first thing to be built, and
very
then they
well could have
started
been.
building things around it. And also the cool thing about that short is I believe those were all like the legit actors voicing the
Hmm.
characters. It was Mark Hamill, it was Carrie Fisher, um it was Anthony Daniels.
Yeah, I
So
found
I,
it
I thought
interesting
that was
that
pretty cool.
Anthony Daniels sounded like he almost adjusted his C-3PO voice in that short. It
Hmm.
sounded more,
Animated.
yeah, like less robotic
Yeah.
kind of, because his
Hmm.
character was more fluid. It made sense. Like his voice was like less, I am C, it was more like rounded out. It was cool.
Right. Yeah, it's a good catch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, out of this entire dumpster fire was this little animated short that actually was pretty enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Also, I thought of the style. Have you seen Beavis and Butthead?
Beavis and Butthead. Yes,
That is the
yes.
style of this
You nailed
cartoon,
it. You
and
nailed it.
it works oddly for some reason.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, except for like
Yeah.
the Han face was kind of weird. Like Han Solo's face is
Yeah.
like twice as long as everyone else's face for some
Yeah,
reason.
and he can't open his eyes for some reason. I don't know what the
And the one
deal was
time
with
he
that.
does, they open them like
Yeah,
really
right.
big. Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, best part of the movie, in my opinion, was that piece. We when we opened before we started this pod, we were like, we don't even know how long this one is gonna be because we're probably gonna have far more negative stuff to say than positive stuff to say about
Right.
this movie. But having said that, I guess one of my questions was gonna be like, what was your favorite part? And I knew we would both kind of go with the animated Boba Fett short. So perhaps other than the animated Boba Fett short, what was your favorite part? And if not favorite part, maybe something that at least made you laugh, because it's tough to pick a favorite part of this movie.
Yeah. Instead of favorite part, let's call it the least worst part.
Okay, I like that. I can dig that.
I mean, if I were to take myself out of this being Star Wars, of this being a holiday special or whatever, I kind of enjoyed the bar scene
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
with the music of the Cantina band. And I'll be honest, B. Arthur kind of killed it with the songs. So,
Yeah.
as far as it being a musical, like I could have pictured that song in an actual musical, And she's very good at, she was a great actress. So I did enjoy that as far as for what it was. Did it make sense in anything? No, because that was apparently a video that all of the Empire had to watch or
Yeah.
something like that.
Like, so much about this movie doesn't make sense. The whole
Yeah.
scene is her character. There's this like kind of creepy guy who like wants to be with her, and she's like no, and she's a bartender, and she's like, serving everyone drinks. But this whole scene, the intro into it is that it is a mandatory thing for the Imperial soldiers to all watch.
Mm-hmm. In real time.
In real time. Yeah, and they're like, and at one point they like show the scene happening on the screen, and the soldiers are like live reacting to it, like, oh,
Yeah.
like,
Not really talking about, yeah.
this makes no sense. But I
Yeah.
as far as like acting performances go, everything else in it was so. I'll just say bad. I'm gonna just use the word bad.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Everything else was
Right.
so bad that scene was kind of like, okay, like I didn't hate it.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't hate it as much as everything else
Yeah.
that I've seen in this, because I think maybe because at that point they've kind of broken us down so much that we're like, just give us something that isn't bad.
Your expectation is at the floor, and so you're like, oh, this is not awful.
Right. But yeah, even, and I don't know where we are in time as far as, because I guess this is obviously after the release of Star Wars, what will become New Hope, and before Empire Strikes Back, as far as when this was released, right?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this was shown, or this was released between the release of Star Wars, which ends up being A New Hope, and Episode 5, which is Empire Strikes Back, right?
Right. Yes. This
Yeah.
came out in '78, so this would have been the
Right.
year after New Hope.
Yeah. And so what's weird, and I don't know whose involvement was of all of this, or if Lucas had anything to do with it, or I don't know if you know any of that information, but I mean, it just seems so disjointed. I mean, obviously, we know Mark Hamill as Luke, we know Carrie Fisher as Leia, we know Harrison Ford as Han. But even knowing that, it just, when we saw them on screen, it wasn't like it was them still. Like it just, I don't know if it's just the TV, cameras make things look a little different, or it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem Star Wars at all.
Yeah. I'm reading snippets here about the holiday special, and some of them are actually pretty interesting. You want me to read some of them to
Yeah,
you?
let's hear 'em.
So according to Carrie Fisher, George Lucas, so this holiday special has never been released on video. The only way it exists is like either on a bootleg copy or somewhere on the internet.
YouTube.
Yeah, like YouTube. And so, which by the way, I guess if you want to watch the Star Wars Holiday Special, we'll link it down below in the description if you've never seen it before. Tread lightly though.
And we're sorry.
Yeah, and we apologize in advance. Yeah. George Lucas gave Carrie Fisher a copy of this as a special gift for recording the DVD commentary for episode 4, and she used to show it at parties when she would want guests to leave.
Oh my.
Um, George Lucas
Yes.
tried to buy all the copies of this show at one point in order to destroy them, and so that it might never be broadcast again.
Oh wow.
B. Arthur, who was the woman we were talking about in the bar scene, only took the role because her youngest son was a huge Star Wars fan.
I like it.
This, and by the way, you remember when we talked about this in our reaction video about Mark Hamill kind of looking different
Hmm.
and almost like seeming like he was wearing more makeup. This is after he had the accident. So Mark Hamill's
Mm,
face was heavily made up as he was recovering from reconstructive surgery. For some reason, I thought that
gotcha.
was closer to Empire Strikes Back, but
Interesting. Yeah.
I guess that would make sense because they probably had to film that, Empire in like
Pretty.
'78. And
Yeah.
let's see, 40 years later, almost all of the surviving cast who appeared in it are still embarrassed by its existence. And George Lucas is known to have walked out of interviews anytime an interviewer asks a question about the Star Wars Holiday
Wow.
Special. Harrison Ford says he has never seen it, so there's no point in asking him questions about
Yeah. Nice.
it. Oh, that's funny.
Wow.
One of
Yeah.
one of the writers has admitted that he was on cocaine heavily when he helped to write the special.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Um, the
That
Life
checks out.
song by Carrie Fisher is based on the theme from Star Wars Episode 4. Fisher demanded that she be allowed to sing in the special, but didn't like the song. By the way, we didn't talk about that. Carrie Fisher sings in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
Princess Leia sings in
Leia
this movie,
sings.
and it is a little bit cringe, maybe a lot of bit cringe.
And it's too bad. Honestly, that's probably the first time I've heard Carrie Fisher sing. I don't know if I've
Yeah,
ever run into
me too.
anything, not a bit, pretty good voice, but too bad it was showcased here. Maybe that's why we never got her to sing again because of that.
Yeah, I have no words for it. I mean, the ending is
Yeah.
trying to like kind of emulate. Which, by the way, I don't know if we did a great job of like explaining what the premise of the movie is, but maybe that's because there's not really a great like it's hard to
Through line.
explain what it is when it doesn't really exist. But more or less, there's this thing that takes place on the Wookiee home planet, which it is a different name than Kashyyyk, by the way. It was similar though. It was like Kashyyyk or something like that.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah, and
Kazoo, I don't know.
Kazoos, yeah. And so basically the premise of the movie is that Chewie and Han are trying to get back to Chewie's home planet where who we think is his wife, we thought was his mother, but it was actually his wife, his
Hmm.
son and his dad are all living on this planet, and he's trying to get back there to celebrate Life Day. But there's so many detours throughout the movie that you just kind of like forget about that for most of it.
Right.
And so I guess what was my original train of thought? What were we going to delve into before I started like trying to break down what the plot of this movie is?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was. We were just trying to figure out the whole time what was even happening. I think from a high level, that's what we were waiting to happen. And it happened eventually, and then it ended. But that's pretty much the whole story. Nothing nothing crazy about it. Well, I guess everything was crazy about it, but it could have been like I said, a 35-minute show, but it ended up being this 90-minute epic drama musical thing that we had to endure.
Um, sorry, I just keep reading more fun facts about that, and I feel like a lot of them merit saying and talking about because some of them are really funny and some of them are interesting too. A funny one here. There was a book titled "The 100 Dumbest Events in Television History."
Oh my god.
Guess what took the number one spot?
No shot. Really?
um,
I'm not surprised.
yeah, but on an interesting note, there's a character in the movie Son Dan or Son Dan. I don't remember how his name was pronounced in the movie, but he's essentially the traitor guy who
Mhm.
is part of the rebellion and he's friends with the Wookiee family. That is the earliest incarnation of Lando Calrissian. Interestingly
Wait,
enough,
what?
so
Really?
that is like the rough draft of Lando in this movie. which is interesting, because
Now you have to look back at that character a little differently, right?
yeah, I mean, I can see like maybe some subtle similarities, but he feels a little different. We actually joked
Yeah, yeah.
about while we were watching the movie that he reminds us a lot of Luthen, a character from Andor, and actually,
Mhm.
according to what he looks like in this movie, and what Luthen's age would be in Andor, and he has the same exact occupation as Luthen.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
You know, maybe this
Oh yeah.
is this is where Luthen ends up on Kashyyyk
Yeah,
selling
that's right.
crap to Wookiees.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I
I
don't
can't
know.
believe this was and I can't believe this was part of a Star Wars for a time being. I don't know how quickly George Lucas wanted to eradicate this from anything. But to know that this even existed for however long it did, and I mean, obviously still does now. When it hits the internet, it's there forever now. Um, I, it just amazes me that this was part of it at any point. But as fans, as Star Wars fans, I feel like this is a checkbox. You're just like, well, we have to at least know what craziness happened there. Like I said, I had a friend that told me it was amazingly terrible, and that doesn't give it enough words to what we saw tonight.
Yeah, it is a sight to see. I think as a Star Wars fan, if you're a Star Wars fan, I think you have to see this just to say you've seen it and then never watch it
Right.
again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Maybe the animated short I'll watch again.
Honestly, yeah, and I was reading more just a little bit, and so that was actually re-released. Just that portion
Mm.
was re-released on the 2011 complete saga Blu-ray set,
Oh,
which
okay.
it now is not the complete saga. I guess
Yeah.
that would
Right.
only
Right.
be
Right.
1 through 6, but so they have re-released that portion, the probably the only good part of the movie, as its
Right.
own sort of like special edition thing. So also an
Mm-hmm.
interesting note.
Wow.
I just keep reading more and more cool facts about this. Another cool one is that if you've seen The Mandalorian, Din Djarin's sniper rifle is directly
Oh,
taken from the Boba Fett short in this
yeah, that
in
makes
this one.
sense. With the little fork at the end, yeah.
Yeah. I just overall, I mean, we could go straight into grading it if you want to, but I
Sure.
I oh dear. What would I rank this? I mean, story-wise, I don't even know how to go lower than an F, but I'll give it an F in terms of story. It's just like so scatterbrained
Yeah.
and non-sequential and just all over the place. Um, humor, I'll go like for like a C plus on humor. I genuinely laughed a few times. I was like, "That's funny." I appreciate that a lot. Um, what else can
But
I?
was that intended humor though? That's some of
No,
it
no,
as
and
well.
that's the funny part is that like 75% of the humor in this movie is non-intended. It's just like let's put
Right.
that in there and it'll be good, and then it's not good and it's so bad that it's funny. So
Right.
there's just a little bit of redeeming quality in there. That's another good point. Do you think like some of the jokes and things in this when they came out in 1978
Eight. 78, yeah.
were like funnier than we when we watched them just now and we're like, "What?"
Yeah. I don't think so. Because if they were, then maybe this sticks around a little bit more. Maybe this stands the test of time a little bit better because Lucas is behind it, or I don't know. I don't think they do, but and I can't imagine. Kind of like what you were saying. 8-year-olds like watching this and just completely getting destroyed by this piece of work. When they expected to see their favorite Star Wars, and this comes out. So yeah, I don't think that any of the comedy that was intended comedy probably was very well received. I mean, maybe here and there. I mean, like the one scene where I forget his name. I'm gonna call him Luthen. Luthen keeps going back to like try to give him his card, and he's like, oh, and the stormtrooper pulls the gun out. He does it like 2 or 3 times. So like that type of joke, that type of timing. Maybe that was something that was you know popular at that time. But yeah, I mean, for me, the grade. I mean, the only way I can grade this is an F. Um, and with the caveat to say that's outside of the animated part. I'm gonna lump that
Yeah, I
aside.
think it's fair
I'm
to
gonna
say
lump
that we
that
can
aside.
separate that as like a whole different entity because
Right. Yeah.
it's just not. It doesn't even feel like it's remotely part of the same movie.
Right. Yeah. So outside of that, yeah, F across the board. No, no, I have no problem saying that about a Star Wars.
Humor? Are you giving humor an F too?
Again, if it was the intended humor, then maybe I would, but
Sure,
it
sure.
was more like the laughing, uncomfortable laughing, cringe humor that maybe I won't necessarily go off. So yeah, I'm probably giving it an F as well because everything else was just so bad. But if we're talking about the animated short, I mean, I'll give that like a B, like a C or a B or C, like because it was fun. It was fun to watch, and again, I think part of it was we were pounded so hard by the everything how bad this was that anything that was good was going to be even better because in comparison to it, whether it was the bar scene or now this animated short, the animated short was, I mean, all Star Wars stuff. It was, it was all of the characters. It was something very familiar. It was the introduction of Boba Fett, so I think that kind of stuff, that's the stuff that we would love to see. So yeah, maybe in the context of this particular show, I'm going to give it that, higher grade of a B or C. Maybe I don't give it that high if it like stand alone by itself. I don't know, but because it was in the middle of this, I'll give it that.
That's fair. I'll go. Oh gosh, I'll go overall D plus.
Yeah,
That feels generous, but I'll stick
yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah. Disney Plus,
Disney, yeah, that's what I was going for there. Yeah, I just read
not
an
sponsored, not sponsored.
not hashtag not sponsored. I just read another footnote that part of the reason Harrison Ford was so reluctant to go back to finish 5 and 6 was because of this, because of the holiday
Oh
special.
my God, can you imagine?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'm
all
not surprised
we
at all.
almost didn't get Harrison Ford and Empire and
Yeah,
Return of the Jedi because of this thing.
imagine a recast of that. That would have been crazy.
Oh yeah, it just would not have been the same Star Wars that we know and love today.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
little bit of a shorter podcast episode probably for y'all on this one. Unless Joey, you have any thoughts on on the Star Wars Holiday Special? Anything you want
I
to
was.
tell people
I'm.
about it?
I'm glad there's not a sequel.
Yeah, we could film and produce and direct and shoot one. Never say never. If
Apparently, you just need some cocaine writers on cocaine.
yeah, and some Wookiee costumes. Any aspiring
Yeah.
actors out there that you
Yeah.
want to film the Star Wars Holiday Special to, email us hothhangout@gmail.com. We really want to shoot this thing. It's gonna be great. Uh, but yeah, don't. I mean, if you've never seen it, watch it. If you've seen it, maybe don't watch it again. As I've just mentioned, you can always email us hothhangout@gmail.com. You can hit us up over on Twitter at Hoth Hangout. And we've got lots more fun Star Wars content, reactions, and podcasts coming your way in the near future. We're very, very excited for 2023. We're going to kind of kick off our excitement with actually the last 2022 podcast will be going out next week. And I'm excited for that one because I haven't actually seen an episode of Bad Batch probably, gosh, it's probably almost been a year, I want to say. And so we're gonna be rewatching and recapping in our next podcast the first season of Bad Batch because on January 4th, season 2 of the Bad Batch comes out officially, and so we'll also be reacting and breaking down and podcasting on season 2 of Bad Batch, and then we get into Mandalorian a few weeks after that, and it's just gonna be a really fun year overall. So stay tuned for some awesome Hoth Hangout Star Wars content coming your way. And yeah, Joey, any closing thoughts? Not necessarily related to the Star Wars holiday special, but maybe just Star Wars as a whole. I feel like we've roasted the movie too much.
I mean, maybe not Star Wars as a whole, but happy holidays to everyone.
Yes.
I hope you know this the weekend is going to be Christmas weekend, and for anybody who celebrates, and I know it's Hanukkah season as well. So, thank you for listening to Hoth Hangout. We do appreciate all of you all, and I hope you have a great time with your family and your friends this week.
Most definitely. Have a very safe and happy holiday season. Much love to each and every one of you listening or watching this on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And as I said, we will be back next week for our next episode covering season 1 of The Bad Batch. And thanks again for listening. May the Force be with you. Don't watch the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Please don't.